I don't know. I don't. It's not something that it doesn't film until the fall, so
Yeah.
it could be soon. It could be not. It was weird. It was kind of, and that was one of the things. Like, it just felt weird. If it was an in-person audition and it felt the way it felt, I would have easily said, "Oh, they're not considering me at all." Like, even before I started acting, like before I started to do it. But because it was also the Zoom, I'm like, I'm not sure. I'm not holding my breath. Put it that way. And then maybe I'm wrong. I've been known to be wrong. Sometimes, you have an audition and you're like, wow, that did not go well. And the next thing you know, you get the job. But so, you never know.
Mhm.
So how's everybody doing? Everybody safe and well, and
Doing
things
great.
things are starting to shift a little bit.
Hmm.
So that's good. I think, things seem like they're moving back to normalcy.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, a lot of sports arenas, they're having a lot of people back in, so that's nice to see.
Yeah, yeah. And I read the yesterday about the CDC's kind of relaxing, social distance mask guidelines for people who are fully vaccinated. So I was like, oh, so we're moving in that direction. That's good.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, and um, productions are going. So it I think we're on the downside of it. Thank goodness.
Wow.
Wacky times.
Chris, can I just ask, in your experience with whether it's a Zoom audition or a regular one, do you
Yeah.
dress the part for the character, or do you do you go like as it is an interview, like do you go in a suit no matter what the
It,
character is?
no, that's a really good question. It was I for this Zoom audition I had, I wound up because I was like, do I dress? Is it going to be over? Is it going to seem overdone? And I kind of went to the fact that because the character was very uh, nerdy, and he's like an accountant, and so I dressed for the part because I felt like it made me feel like the character. Like, I know
Mm,
if I'm wearing sweats and a t-shirt, you
mm,
feel a certain way. If I'm wearing a suit and tie, or a sweater vest and tie, I feel a certain way. So I decided to dress because I just felt like it would keep me. I even though it was like Zoom, I still wore, like, dress shoes, and
mhm.
like full pants and everything, because I was like, I want to feel like
Hmm.
I'm in the space. And if I'm wearing like sweats or sneakers or just barefoot,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be a
So
little.
you weren't in your boxers from the waist down, no?
Exactly, yeah, because I'm going to feel a little loosey goosey. You know what I mean? It's just not going to be quite right. So I tend to dress for the part if I feel like I need it,
Mm,
to do the best job. I mean, over the years, I used to dress for the part to try to please other people, and sometimes I feel like I went overboard. I went in for a doctor thing, wow, like a long time ago. And I went to the audition in full scrubs, and I just felt like, man, I'm working too hard. I shouldn't have done that because I didn't
mm,
need to do it for me.
mm,
Um,
mm,
I've seen actors. I remember going in for a baseball. I don't know if it was a baseball movie, a baseball pilot, and one actor came in full baseball, like everything. He had his own. He came in with his own bat. He had a full uniform on with cleats and everything, even like down to the gold chains, so like being like a flashy baseball. I mean, I at that point I had already kind of decided not to ever go that far, and I
mm.
don't think he ever got that job. But yeah, I just dressed in the way that I need to.
Hmm.
Hey, Irvin. Irvin's my friend from high school.
Oh, what's up, man?
I don't know if he's on yet.
But it's really weird because sometimes, like, I remember going in for like it was kind of a part I really didn't want. I just kind of, I almost tried to self sabotage it. It was like a DA or something. And at the time, we had one car, one working car, one car that didn't work at all. And I had a motorcycle. And so, my family needed the one car, working car. So I rode to the audition on my motorcycle, and I'm showing up for this like DA, and I'm like in a leather jacket and a t-shirt.
Mhm.
And honestly, it was like I was kind of doing everything I could to not get the part. And I was seeing other people in the waiting room where I'm like, they should cast that person. And I didn't feel like the audition was really all that. I felt I was boring in it, and they offered me the role. So you never know. You never know.
All right. Well, I got the live stream rolling.
Yay. Okay.
I guess we'll get started. Sorry, starting a little later than I wanted, but at least we got a
No,
question.
that's not bad. Fashionably late, just 10 minutes.
Yeah. So I always like starting off. One of the biggest gifts we can give is our time. So, you've always been really gracious, and I really appreciate you.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
For me. And I do have my notes,
Cool.
my security blanket. And if it sounds like I'm reading, I probably am. But hopefully I'll get better as time goes.
It's okay.
So this is Cress, as people know. People will probably know you from a lot of the shows you've been on, 90210, which started your career way back when. Living Single, which a lot of people know you from. Nash Bridges, which we're going to talk about. Prison Break, Friday Night Lights, which one that you really liked being on. Heart of Dixie, which is when I met you,
Yeah.
show that I really like. And of course, Black Lightning with only 2 episodes left. Second to last episode airing Monday.
Yeah. Yes.
Been a short but long ride.
Hasn't felt that short. Yes, exactly. Short but long. There you go. There you go.
But you've been around a while.
I have. I have.
So my mission statement for the podcast, which is stated with my logo, is to
Mhm.
transform, illuminate, aspire, inspire, and motivate, which I stole. And one of the reasons I started this, which I shared with you, is to kind of promote positive change through the arts and through the artists. So that is the lens that I'm kind of focusing my question on.
Nice.
With that said, I figured we'd get to know you first a little bit. We've been friends a long time, and I realized going through some of your interviews that there's a lot of things I actually don't know about you. And I was thinking back on our friendship, and I was feeling a little guilty.
Oh.
So we got some catching up to do. So I figured we could do some of that.
Let's do it in front of the world. Why not?
Yeah. So anyways, I thought it might be fun to go through a short timeline of your life.
Yeah.
You were born in Germany not too long ago. Moved to Chicago. Was that with your parents, with your mom and your dad to Chicago, or was that just your mom?
Yeah, I mean, well, no, that was both. It was so I was born in Heidelberg, Germany, and only because my dad he was drafted. It was like during Vietnam, and he was drafted. It's funny because I was just talking with my oldest daughter about this. She's like, in history, she's learning about pop culture and kind of like, and she's in the 70s currently. So we were talking about things, and it was really cool. We had this cool conversation about Marvin Gaye's "What's Going On," which is an awesome album. But we were talking about Vietnam, and I was just, my dad was drafted, and fortunately, he didn't have to go to Vietnam. He ended up going, being stationed in Heidelberg. And so, as the story goes, my parents were married. He called my mom and said, come to Germany. I want to make a baby. That's the stories go. Yeah, so she did, they did, and I was born there. But as soon as I was born, I went back. We moved back to Chicago, which is where both my mom and dad. My dad was from Chicago, and my mom lived in Chicago, and they met. And so yeah, so I was in Chicago. So I don't really remember Germany. I don't have any memory of Germany. One of these days, I'm going to actually go and see where I was born. But we moved back to Chicago, and my parents divorced shortly after that. And then my mother and we moved to Los Angeles when I was 3. So, and then I've been in like Southern California ever since.
Except for the short stint for Black Lightning.
Yeah, except for I've been let's see. At one point when I was I just finished 6th grade, and my mother announced that she wanted to move back to Chicago because all her family were from Chicago. So we loaded everything up in a U-Haul and drove cross country back to Chicago to much my dismay. But then that lasted for about a half a year. We went through a winter, and my mother's like, you know what? I don't like this. We're going back to California. So we went back, and I ended up back at kind of halfway through 7th grade back in California. I've shot in different places temporarily. I shot a year doing Nash Bridges. I shot a year in San Francisco. But for the most part, yeah, this was doing Black Lightning was the first time of deciding to okay, we're gonna pack up everyone and move someplace else and do something long term. So it was kind of brand new to me.
Yeah, my boot camp was in, and my A school was in Chicago, and I did not like the winters, and I did not like the summers. And then we had to draw.
Other than that, it was great.
Yeah, I know.
We had to draw our where we were going to be stationed out of a hat. And guess where I was put? Guess what I picked?
What? Out of a hat?
Yeah, we picked where we were being stationed out of a hat.
So what did you get?
Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough, man. I mean, it's not a bad city, but it is and it's not just Chicago. It's just certain regions where, I mean, Chicago winters are brutal. Fall is beautiful, spring is beautiful, but then if you get in the thick of the summer, it's really, really hot and humid.
Yeah. Unbearable.
And so that's why people when they get to fall and they get to spring, they are ecstatic and they're out and they're just like, life is great, because they know it's not going to be very for a while.
Luckily, I was able to trade for Bethesda, but I didn't really want to go there either. So eventually I traded for North Carolina. I did not get San Diego like I wanted, and I didn't get Pensacola like I wanted. But...
Well, it's crazy. I think I could have been born in Alaska, because originally my dad was, so as the story goes, he was in basic training, and you have to take all these written tests. I don't know if they still have to. I've never been in the service, but you got to take all these written tests. And my grandfather told him, hey, if you want to avoid the front lines, you need to score really, really high on these tests. So he studied his butt off, and he scored really, real high. And he was originally going to be stationed in Alaska, but he wound up switching with a buddy of his, because this buddy of his was a big loved fishing. And so the idea of fishing and ice fishing really appealed to him. And so he switched, and that's how he ended up in Heidelberg. So I guess I could have been born in Alaska.
My daughter was actually, her stepdad was stationed in Germany. So she was there when she was 5.
Oh, wow.
She still has memories of it.
Funny anecdote that is, I just think it's hilarious. My dad told me that, he was married. So when he was in Germany, but he had a lot of single buddies, and he found out, so the black soldiers would go out with German women, and the women they would go out with would get really squirrely as it got closer to midnight, and they always wanted to end the date at midnight. They were always really we have to end at midnight. And one of his buddies kind of made a girl stay stay on the date past midnight. And then found out that the reason they were all squirrely is because the white soldiers were telling the women that black men had tails and that their tails came out after midnight, and they believed it.
Oh my goodness.
So they were like, they were scared that it was going to suddenly like. I just found that really amusing.
So your parents were divorced when you were 3?
They were divorced before that, like, so I don't even have any memory of them actually ever being married. They got divorced, and then my mom and I moved to like a suburb of Illinois, and then we had some distant cousins who lived in Los Angeles, and so that's kind of the impetus. My mother just wanted a change, and our cousins were like, "Come out to LA," so we moved out to LA. I'm really happy that all happened. And originally, when we first moved out to LA, we lived with our cousins who were kind of like Compton-esque area of South Los Angeles. And then we moved out on our own, and we stayed in like South LA until I was about 7. And then, as my mother put it, she said she just kind of saw things changing in the neighborhood a bit. So then she moved us to Orange County. And then I toured Orange County because my mother liked to move a lot. And then I went to Fullerton Junior College. And then when I transferred over to UCLA. So that's kind of what got me back to LA. And finished college, graduated, started working, and the rest
It's history.
Yeah.
Well, I bring up your dad because we live in my parents were divorced like so many others, but we live in a culture where, there are just way too many single parent homes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A lot of children are suffering because of it.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
I lived with my dad. He was in the home, but he wasn't really present. Kind of the curse of him having a father who wasn't very active in his life.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was similar with your father.
No, very, very much so. I mean, my father, his whole life, he's passed away. He passed away about 16 years ago. But he spent his whole life in Chicago, and and then we were in California, so we were like very far from each other. And when I was a child, there were years, a fair amount of years, where my mother would put me on a plane for the summer, and I'd go to Chicago for the summer, and I'd see my dad and all my aunts and uncles and cousins on his side of the family, but I'd also see my grandmother and my aunt on my mom's side, and kind of spend time. But my dad wasn't really present. I wouldn't say he was present in my life, like really at all. Like it was when we were physically in the same space, he was very present and really loving. And there's things, it's interesting because they're like, one of the things that stand out, I remember, is that my dad, like, even as I got older, like, he wasn't afraid to like give me a kiss, like, like kiss me on my cheek or whatever. And I remember that, and I think it affects me with my son. He's only 5, but it's just like, I just remember like that, even as I was like 10 or 11, like, my dad was never this thing where it's like, don't kiss a man on the cheek. He would just give me a kiss, and it was cool. And again, when we were physically in the same space, he was very present. If we were talking on the phone, he was very present. I remember he would always say, like, at the end of a phone call, he'd be like, "I love you." But then when we weren't, he just wasn't really good with follow through. Like, he just, he didn't call me on birthdays or Christmases, or really didn't call me a lot. Like, I'd always kind of have to call him growing up, and then we'd have this really present conversation, and he'd say, "Hey, I love you." And I'm like, "I love you too." And he's like, "I'll call you next week." and then he wouldn't, and then time would pass, and then I would call him, and then we would just kind of do this dance. Um, and fortunately, it just grew and grew. You know, he came to my college graduation. I remember he gave my mom a big compliment because he's like, "Hey, you did a really good job with him." When I graduated college, I think she really needed to hear that because she did the heavy lifting. But it grew and grew, this kind of like present but not present dynamic, until finally I couldn't take it anymore because it was so much left unsaid, and I just didn't like it. And I kind of got to a point where I was like willing to not have a relationship with him, if we couldn't just clear all this up. So I wrote a very long, very brutally honest letter to him, and I sent it, and then I didn't hear from him for almost a year, and I wasn't going to call him, so I just thought like, okay, so I guess this is done. Um, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, he called and took responsibility for like all of it, and it really started everything over for me and him. Like it was like, because he took, and from that point on, um, like when I like thinking about him now, I think more about, because we had a really good year before he passed away. And I think about the good year, like once we cleared that up and could start fresh, he was like one of my best friends, and I used to love calling him and talking to him about things, um, and I was really happy that we healed before he passed away.
I want to circle back to that a little bit.
Yeah.
But what was it? What was it like? And I kind of understand a little bit how he is, because I haven't been the best at calling either. Especially when you don't get a whole lot back. But what was it like, kind of, growing up without your father there? Like, how did it affect you growing up, like, specifically in like, junior high and high school?
I mean, it was, it was extremely challenging. It just, because as a man, it's like, as a boy and growing to become a man, wasn't anybody around to really talk about life with. Is talk about the things, girls and getting dumped or not getting dumped, or how do you even, talk to a girl, or all these different things. It was just nobody around to talk with about. And I realized that a lot of why we were talking is that my father I think he had this perception that, my parents split up, my mom takes me, comes to California, and I think he had this perception that it was like almost like I didn't need him, and that I was living some great life. And it was like, quite the opposite. But you're just kind of, I mean, the thing is like for me, my mother had to work full time, so I was like a latchkey kid, and we all know what that is now. But I actually remember uh, sitting in and watching television, and like the 11 o'clock, it was a commercial for the 11 o'clock news. And this was sometime in the 70s, where it was like, latchkey kids news at 11. And it was almost like as if that was the first time they had ever coined the phrase and announced it. And then I remember watching the news, realizing, oh, that's me. I'm a latchkey kid. I got the key around my neck, and, I'm left up to my own devices. And so, television raised me. Like, I mean, like television, and like TV dads are really what raised me. So it was really hard and weird, and a lot of trial and error. But I thank God, literally, looking back and realizing like, oh man, my heavenly Father was like guiding me and keeping me safe through a lot of circumstances that probably could have gone wrong.
Yeah. So you never had a father figure to look up to, or someone older that kind of.
I did. I did at different points in my life. Like, I remember there was a period of time. I think early on, I didn't. I didn't really. But there was a period of time when I was around 12, like 10, 11, 12, 13, somewhere in there. My mother worked for this record company. It no longer exists. It was called Rockshire Records. And their big claim to fame was uh, the the kid who played Eddie Munster in the Munsters
Oh yeah.
grew up later, and he had was like a band. And I remember like he had this one song called "Whatever Happened to Eddie." He's I'm the kid from Mockingbird Lane. Like that was the thing. But she worked in the legal department, and she became really good friends. Like her boss was like the lawyer, and she became really good friends with him and his wife, and they were really cool people, and we would like go over their houses for dinner and things like that. And he was like a really strong male figure for a chunk of time.
Yeah.
He made me my first rare steak, and he was just like that was definitely a period of time where I felt like, oh, there's a man around. Um, and then really not until after that, it wasn't until when I went to college, and I went to Fullerton, and my acting mentor, a man named Tom Blank, um, he really took me under his wing, and was a huge like father figure, just as a father figure, but also as an artistic figure in my life. But they've been kind of few and far between.
Do you still keep in touch with either of them?
I haven't seen. God, who was Tom. I do still keep in touch with, like via Facebook and whatnot. He's still. I think he's retired, but like he went from Fullerton after I left. Shortly after that, he moved. He was from up north, and so he moved back to. Both him and his wife are like theater folk and theater teachers, and they moved to San Mateo, and then he was teaching at a college in San Mateo. And then he retired, but yeah, I still keep in touch with him. And we talk about when we get back to Cali, make at least a yearly northern trip. I'll be able to see him and hang out. The last time I saw him physically, we were at an old function for our old college, and he was there. Him and his wife were there, and I remember them proceeding to tell us about the show Orphan Black, because we hadn't seen it yet. But they're older now, so they just also proceeded to like just give up tons of spoilers through the course of it. We did wind up watching the entire series and loving it, but
That's Kristen's Kristen's favorite. Isn't that Kristen's favorite show, or one of them?
Orphan Black is one of them. Yeah, one of them. Yeah.
I remember she talking there. She really likes that actress too. I remember.
Oh yeah, it's a crazy. I mean, it was an amazing show. Just an amazing performance by one actress who was just. I don't think I've ever seen it. I watching for anybody who hasn't seen it, you should see it. And the lead actress plays like you lose track of how many characters she plays, but she plays them so they're all so distinctly different. I remember watching it going, I don't like. She obviously doesn't have kids and probably doesn't have a husband, because there's just no like you can only be single and do that much work. Like I was like physically tired watching her, amazed and tired at the same time, because I'm like, that's a lot of work, man, and she's killing it. But yeah, I digress. But I do keep in touch with him, and he was just the kind of, especially from an artistic standpoint, the first one to take me under his wing and give me opportunities in college. Which they had really never done this before, but they decided to do a production of Othello and like precast me as Othello. And this is not something that they did. Usually everything had to be auditioned, but they precast me as Othello, like announced it. And he said distinctly, he didn't tell me directly. I found out like after the fact. He's like, no, he decided that like, hey, Cress should have this opportunity, because when he goes out in the world, he may not get this right away. So
Well, you also love Shakespeare.
I love Shakespeare.
I'm still struggling with it. I still struggle.
It's an acquired taste. I understand.
But one thing that that I just noticed about you, even from the first day that I met you, is that you're very grounded.
Very what?
Grounded. Like
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
individual. So I'm just, so your mom worked a lot, so I don't know how much you got to see her, and then your dad struggled with that. Not a whole lot of father figures. And don't take this to your head, but how did you come out to be such a great human being? What was high school and junior high? Were you like you are now? Wondering if you're a troublemaker and you kind of just, because you turned out to be one of the best people that I know.
No, it was this thing. There's something like, so the easiest, the quick answer is, all I could say is God. And I know it just, that may sound pretentious or ridiculous, but I legitimately mean that it's just God. Like, I remember there was a stretch of time when my mother, so I remember one summer, like, when I would go to Chicago and spend time with my family, and I would stay pretty much the whole summer. And I came home and to find I had a new puppy and a new living boyfriend. My mother had a new living boyfriend, and the puppy was great. The boyfriend was not. And he, it wasn't necessarily physically abusive, thank God, but he was just abusive in so many other ways. And he was a product of his life. He talked about, he was just like this guy from New York, grew up in a very, very big family, and his father was very abusive. He would tell the stories, and he was just very, very abusive to the family. And so that was what he knew. Huh?
How old were you at that time?
I was probably about 8, 9.
So you're fairly young.
Yeah. And my mother had dated over the years. I think this was the first person that lived with us, and definitely the first person she had ever let like discipline me, like kind of take charge of the house. And he, like I said, he wasn't physically abusive. I think he had only spanked me once, but he had this like corporal punishment for everything. That everything, like if I just forgot to take the trash out, it was 1 month in your room. For like that, like every offense was 1 month in your room. And that meant like you go to school, you come back to your room, you go back out, you eat dinner out with us, you go right back to your room. And so it was pretty hard to be perfect. So I spent a lot of time in my room. And I just remember talking to God a lot when I was in that room. And just kind of, I don't know if that attributed to me being I'm an introvert, and I have a really healthy life up here in my mind palace. I talk to myself quite a bit. If there's nobody in the house, I talk to myself out loud. And I think part of it is just, I was pretty much an only child most of my life, and then a lot of those things being in your room a lot. So I talk to God, I talk to myself, and that might be part of it, but there was just something in me. Now, I wasn't a perfect kid by any stretch of the imagination. I could, I'd wisecrack in class, or break rules here and there, but I would only do it up to a certain point. Like I wouldn't say I was a rebellious kid. I would break rules to a certain point. I did things, but like my mother worked all the time, so I could get away with things because she wouldn't know about it unless I really, really, really got into trouble. And there's just something, and I kind of almost attribute it to my father, and I'm like, maybe these things are just kind of we're just kind of wired this way, almost genetically, is that I have this I don't know, this fairness thing in me and it regards for me and other people that like when a line of fairness is crossed, um, something goes off in me, and it's like I don't really care about my own physical being, my physical, safety at that point. It's just this must be rectified. And I think it also kind of translated into grades. I didn't want, my mother worked a lot. She didn't really focus on my schooling, but it was just for me. I just wanted to be exceptional. And I knew that C's were average. And so like C's weren't acceptable to me. They weren't necessarily to my mom. It was like, I don't, I think I was also very aware that like I'm a black man and a black boy. And I was like in Orange County. So it was like, when I heard C was average, I'm like, I don't know. You're not gonna get me being average. So it just was something that was wired in me. But I don't want to let me like, trust me, I've made quite a few mistakes, and I've lived a safely rebellious life, if that makes any sense. And the times when I crossed the line, again, those were moments where I think only God kind of pulled me back and kept bad things from happening to me.
Did you go to church as a kid?
I did. Even though we moved a lot, my mother took us to church, and I was like baptized at 7. And I remember that because it was not a place that like just baptized kids, like they weren't like a thing. It was like, I remember we were at this church and you had to go through this process before it wasn't just like you just say, hey, I want to be baptized. Like, yeah, like, no, you had to go through like kind of like almost like counseling to get baptized. And I remember them asking me, because they were just kind of amazed, like, do you understand what you're doing? And I was like, yeah, no, I do. Yeah, I know that this is for the rest of my life. This is like that Jesus is like, is this is forever. I know that I'm choosing this forever. And I got baptized at 7. But I was also like, I knew that I wanted to be an actor pretty much my whole life. And even when I was like probably at least 10, and that whole thing about little kids, like, go, hey, little kid, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I'd say, I want to be an actor. And before anybody said anything, I said, I'm prepared to be poor.
Yeah.
Because I knew what it meant, So I don't know. I think because I spent so much time by myself and I watched a lot of film and television that I shouldn't have been watching for my age, that I grew up a little fast.
Yeah. Did your mom have what kind of influence did your mom have on you growing up?
I mean, part of it was, like, hey, like I said, getting me to church and really laying down the foundation of our spiritual walk. And thankfully she laid it, like she had it, kind of instilled it in me early, because it was a period of time. I don't remember how old I was, but I remember that suddenly my mother just started exploring being Buddhist, and we started going to a Buddhist temple, and she would chant, and we started meeting like all these Buddhists, and they were really wonderful people. Like they became like kind of, family friends, and we'd go over their house. I remember that was the first time I ever tried sushi. I didn't like it at the time. I love it now, but and they were really lovely. But I just remember like, and I don't, no knock on Buddhism. So I hope nobody like get mad at me because I'm not like knocking Buddhism, but I just remember I just felt a need to pray for my mom a lot, and and then eventually she just kind of stopped being Buddhist and went back to Christianity. But that was, I mean, I think that was one thing. you know, my mother, because she worked a lot, like when it was time to rest, she rested. Like she, you know, my mother would sleep late when she needed to. She's a night owl. And before I had kids, I was an extreme night owl. So I definitely inherit that from her. And then one of the biggest things is that, you know, I was a really shy kid, like painfully shy. Our cousins I talked about who lived in Los Angeles, they were all older than me, and they were all really, not all of them, but a lot of them were really gregarious, really outgoing, and there'd always be music playing in their house, and they'd be dancing in the living room, and I would go off to the bathroom and close the door and like dance in the bathroom by myself. Like I couldn't even dance in front of people, and I was just this painfully shy kid. And you know, growing up, even all the way into high school, I hadn't really done any theater. I was in choir, and my mother would always be like, "You need to smile more. You need to smile more." So she saw nothing in me that would tell you that my kid's going to be an actor. Um, and I remember when I told her, I'm like, I want to be an actor. And to her credit, she didn't say like, "Are you crazy?" or "Make sure you have something to fall back on." Or she's like, "Well, good for you. You go for it." And then it wasn't until like years later when we had this high school talent show, and I emceed the talent show, and you know I was in charge of kind of writing my own sketches, and when I was younger in high school, comedy was the thing I wanted. I loved Jerry Lewis and Eddie Murphy, and I was just and a lot of the old comics, and so comedy was what I wanted to do. And so she came to this talent show, and that's the first time she saw like her son, because I was like doing Michael Jackson impersonations and dancing and doing all these different things. She's like, "Oh my God, who are you?" Like, what? But I just it but what was amazing is that like it was before that, before she'd ever seen any of that, that she was like, "Yes, go do that if you want to do that." And that, I think that was exceptional, because I gave her no signs that I would be good at it and that I should do it. So yeah, I mean, and even in a roundabout way, my father, he kind of did the same thing, in the fact that my father, growing up, like, yeah, everybody said all he wanted to do was sing. That's all he ever wanted to do was sing. And he liked swimming and he wanted to sing. And he kind of loosely attempted it and then gave up his dream really early on. And almost like by that example, I just, that fueled me. I was like, I don't want to ever say what if. And so I'm going to go for what I got to do regardless. And if I got to be poor, I got to be poor. But this is what I got to do 100%. You know, and even years later, I saw, and at this point I was already in college, and I was, you know, majoring in theater. But I remember this moment. My dad, you know, he, for most of his life, he drove the subway, and also conducted like announced stops. That's what he did as a job. And I remember him calling me, and a group of like individual jazz musicians who they had good solo careers. They just, on the lark, they decided to kind of form a band, and they were kind of jamming and just trying to figure it out. And I remember him calling me, going, "Yeah, you know, these guys, invited me to come, you know, to jam with them, to sing with them." I'm like, "Oh, Dad, man, you got to do that." And he's like, "Yeah, I'm thinking about it." And then a little while later, I talked to him later, and I'm like, "Hey, Dad, did you do that?" And he's like, "No, I didn't do it." You know, and I realized it was fear. Like he had been so, he was afraid, and it just blew my mind. I was just like, this was your dream, and you got so far away from it that you let fear like rob you of something that I know would have given him a ton of joy. And so those things just like, it just fueled me. That was like, no, man, I'm not ever going to stop this. I'm not, you know, I didn't have a fallback. I just like, this is what I'm going to do, whether I make a living or not. So,
Well, you've seen me, you know, when we've worked on scenes, fear is kind of, remember some of those scenes that I would do. and they would just be bad because I'd be so in my head with fear.
Well, fear, man, it is a killer. It is. It's a killer, and it's like. But then if you remove it, like, just amazing things happen. I mean, I think I think about, like, I remember times like when I remember one time when I was at UCLA, and the very first thing I had to, like, I was going to acting class and I had to perform a monologue, and I was sick. Like, I was sick as a dog, and I had taken NyQuil and everything. And I think because I was already sick, it was just kind of like, screw it. And I mean, it was some of the best work I'd ever done. And I think a lot of times, if you remove the fear, just some really beautiful work happens. Even just this last year, when I was this last season of Black Lightning, like, typically whenever I was doing a show, a television show, you're working consistently for 6 to 9 months, and then all of a sudden you're off for months, and then you come back. And every year, not even Black Lightning, even back to Hart, Dixie and other things, when I would come back after a hiatus and we'd start working, that first day, I would just leave going, I suck. I don't think I'm not very good. I really blew that day. And it just would take a little while to get back into, like, I can act again. And this last season, we started the season, and my very first scene, like, and I finished the day, I was like, I didn't feel that this time. That's weird. Like, I was like, no, I felt like right in the zone. And it was, part of it was just, I kind of got to a relaxed point where I was like, not so much that I didn't care, but it was just like some of that fear had gone away. And I just got to this relaxed point of, like, no, trust it, and almost like lean back as opposed to lean forward. And it's changed me, not just then, but like even my manager knows that. He was like, wow, because I'm watching your work and it just seems really effortless. And I'm like, yeah, because I'm starting to lean back now and not lean so forward into it. I'm starting, because my tendency, if something's not working, is like, oh, get in there, work it.
Yeah.
Get tighter with it, hold on to it harder. And I started to realize, if something's not working, I'm like, just relax, just lean back, and it kind of takes care of itself.
It also shows that acting like life, it's you're learning till the day you die.
That's just one of the reasons why I was like, Dad, I think I want to do this. Even when I was a kid, I was like, I just kind of pictured that it would never be boring, and yeah, that it's something that would just always be exciting all the way until the very end. And I love the idea that there's not a retirement. Like, it's not like a thing like where you're suddenly like, oh, I'm too old now, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And it's true. Like, because I'm 50 years old, and it was this season I felt like a new level of relaxation came to me.
Just going back to your father for a little bit.
Yeah.
You had to get to the point. How old were you when you reached out to him?
So I reached out to him twice, and the first time, well, even going back, I remember when I was in college, I was at Fullerton College, and so I was probably like 19 or so. And I had told you what the rhythm was with my father. I would call him, we'd have this cool conversation. He'd say, I love you, I'll call you next week, or I'll call you next month, or whatever. And then he wouldn't, and then time would pass, and then I'd call him, and we'd just replay that over again. And so somewhere around, like, when I was early college, I just suddenly got tired of that dynamic. And I was just like, you know what? I'm not going to call him. He's got to call me now. Like, I'm not going to call him. And so I think at that point, it might have been at well over a year, and we just didn't talk because he never called me. And I was just shoving it down. Like, I wasn't necessarily dealing with it. I was just shoving it down. And my girlfriend at the time, she kind of noticed it, that, like, I was just trying to shove it down. And then I was at a friend's house. We were watching, I think, a movie called Running on Empty. I think it was. I know it was like River Phoenix, And I think Judd Hirsch was in it, and it was this weird kind of father-son dynamic in the movie. And it was the weirdest thing. We're just a bunch of college kids watching this movie, and something went on the screen that was like a father-son thing. And suddenly, like, I felt this thing coming up where I was like, I got to get out of this room because I'm about to cry. I can't keep it from not happening. It's coming, and I don't want anybody to see me do this. And so I went out back, and I, like, in our backyard, and I just got up against a wall, and it was just coming. It was just pouring out of me, and it clicked at that point where I was like, oh, I got to call my dad, and I've just been shutting this down. So I did. I called him. And I mean, we hadn't talked in well over a year, and he picked, it was like no time had passed. He just picked up, like, hey, we had this conversation, and I wasn't ready to confront him yet. And we had this conversation, and it just started the cycle again. So we did that for a little while longer. And then it was like in the 90s. So I was in my 20s. I was out of college. I was like living on my own, working actor, living in Los Feliz. And I remember a really good friend of mine. She had a famous dad. And I don't want to like expose any people. So she just had a famous dad that she had a horrible relationship with. She was very estranged from, and didn't talk to him. It was bad. And I was driving down Sunset when somebody called me and was like, hey, did you hear about Jennifer's dad? He died. And I was like, what? And the first thing I thought about was like, oh my goodness, they never like connected. Like they never, like, that's the opportunity to fix that is over. And so shortly after that, I called my dad, and I attempted to air all this stuff out, but I wasn't quite ready yet. I did. I mean, I aired some of the stuff, and he kind of had excuses for everything. He kind of dodged it, here and there. And I thought that was good enough, but we just kind of continued in our same routine. And then I was in my 30s, because I was married to my first wife at the time, living in Pasadena, when I had reached this point. It was back when it was like shortly after when I was doing Nash Bridges. When I was doing Nash Bridges, I was a bit depressed, and I had like gained quite a bit of weight. Because being away from my wife and being in San Francisco by myself most of the time, I just wasn't faring very well. And so I gained a lot of weight. And I remember him calling me and leaving a voicemail. And he was just like, hey, we've been watching you on the show, and he's like, oh, you getting kind of big. We've been talking about it.
Yeah.
And it was on a voicemail, and I was livid. I was just like, what? Are you kidding me? Because I was just like, you aren't even in my thought was like, you're not even in my life, and you're gonna talk about how I'm getting big, where I got really, really good friends, and they don't talk to me like that. Like I got, people who are in my life and really invested, and they don't talk to me like that. And so that kind of started this. It kind of just kicked it off where I was like, you know what, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I don't like this. I don't, and I felt like, because like when I started to work as an actor was suddenly when my dad started calling me. And so I equated it with like, oh, now you're calling me? Like I'm actually like successful now. Now you're calling me? Like, so it reached a point where I was just like, I can't do this. I'm like, I'm ready for this to be over unless we can do it right. And that's when I wrote the letter. So I was like in my 30s when I did that. And I sent the letter, and I didn't hear from him for a year. So I thought that, oh, I guess he read it and this is over. Like, because the letter, I phrased it like, hey, I laid everything out. And I was like, look, if you want to deal with this, then give me a call. If you don't want to deal with this, like, that's it. We're done. And so I didn't hear from him. So I was just like, oh, I guess he doesn't want to deal with this. Like, I guess we're done. And then it was a year later that he just suddenly called, and we had this like just pouring out cathartic conversation that like started everything from scratch. So it was in the like 30s.
Yeah, I bet the letter actually was better than the phone call because
I think so, because it allowed me, like, without any interruption, to just lay it all out, you know?
well, I'm also thinking, a phone call, you kind of forget what the conversation was. But I'm just
Right.
wondering how many times you went back to that letter.
Right. Well, and I think I had to get to a point where, I think the biggest thing was I had to get to a point where, like, this relationship is damaged, and it's really damaged. And I have to be willing to either let this damaged one go. Like, if I can't get a healed one, I don't want this damaged one. And I had to get to that point.
Was that year difficult between the time you sent the letter and when you finally got the phone call?
I mean, it was, but I mean, after a while, because I'm at that point, I'm an adult, I'm doing life, I've got a wife, I've got a career. So I think and we had gone through, I'd been used to long stretches of time of not hearing from him. So I think I just kind of went by, and I was really floored, the day the phone rang. And I think by the time the phone rang, I was just kind of like, oh, okay, I guess this is really over.
Yeah.
But I was also at that point where it was like, I don't like it the way it is, so that's fine. I don't need somebody calling me fat.
Yeah. So the year that that you guys became like best friends, was he still in Chicago? Was it over the phone, or did he move down here, or how did?
No, I mean, it was over the phone a lot, and then he did come down and had a vacation with us, and then we, my wife at the time, we went back to Chicago, and because she had family in Chicago as well, and we went back for a vacation. But it was really cool, man. I mean, because my ex-wife, she didn't have really great relationships with her parents, and it was funny because like we would jokingly and kind of seriously say like your dad's our favorite one. Like he's our favorite, like out of both our mom and dads, and he was just yeah, once we cleared that up, and we I feel like I could confide in him, and we talked about a lot of things. I remember this really funny, sweet moment when he came to California, and I'm trying to show him like an amazing time. He actually, I remember I rented a Mustang convertible, and we drove around showing him LA and all this stuff. And I took him to Crustacean, the restaurant Crustacean in LA. And it's kind of like this kind of like neo Asian fusion restaurant. And we sat down to order, and he was like, oh, I love crab. So he ordered this crab dish. And I had actually never eaten there. I think maybe but like, my wife at the time was just like, you should take him to this, he'll really like it, whatever. So we go to this restaurant, and the dish comes out, and it's like one of those like whole crab where you got to like crack it and all that stuff. It's like a whole crab, and it freaked him out. It was like it looked too I guess spidery, and he was like I can't eat this. And it was kind of cute. Like I was just like, oh, Dad, okay, don't worry about it, we'll get you something else. Because my father, he's not as tall as me. He's like an average height guy, but his voice is like very white. Like his voice is in the basement.
Yeah.
When people talk about me and they go, oh man, you have such a deep voice, I'm like, yeah, okay, that's cute. But my father, he just, was like, if the phone would ring, it'd be like, Cress, this is your father, give me a call. And that's not him trying to be that way. That's where his voice lives. And so to hear this man who's just so like very masculine, very, to be like suddenly see a dish of crab and just like, I can't eat that. Like he was just freaked out. It was kind of cute.
Yeah. So one of the important things is forgiveness.
Yes.
You wrote the
Yes.
letter. Was there, or even after you sent the letter, in between the year, did you have to struggle through forgiveness, or was it fairly easy? Did you, because that's
no, well, the funny thing was like, so for me, it was like, even writing the letter was cathartic, because I laid it out. I didn't sugarcoat it. And that was like you said, it's probably better to write the letter because it allowed me to lay it out without dancing or pulling back, or like I put every detail in there about like, this is the journey of our lives together. This is what it's been like, and everything. So it allowed me to put that out there. So that was already just, for me, cathartic, because it was just like, okay, it's out there. I did it.
Yeah.
And what was interesting was then when he had called and we started kind of talking about these things, and he was really like, again, not dodging this time, but like head on, taking responsibility. It, like, I felt it all going away. It was just really bizarre. It was actually really easy to forgive. And it started a thing because when he passed away, it was a realization that, like, prior to that moment, when I thought about my father, all I thought about was all the times he wasn't there.
Yeah.
But after that moment, and I just felt it in one deep phone call, it all went away. After that, when I thought about my father, I thought about not all those other years, I thought about the good year. And like, when I think about him as a man, that's what I think about now.
Yeah, so when I don't know if I told you this ever, but when I was, I think 5, my mom gave me away to the state.
No, I did not know that.
Never told you. My dad eventually got me out, and he was remarried. The first thing my stepmom said was, "The only reason you're here is because your dad wants you."
Wow.
I had to work through. My stepmom apologized. My mom never did.
Right.
But I had to forgive her.
Yeah.
To move on. And when I thought I did, you forgive someone when you don't bring it up.
Yes. Yeah.
So after I thought I had forgiven her, I kept bringing it up, and realized that we would not have a relationship until I forgave her, whether she apologized ever or not.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it takes time, because I remember, like, when the first time, like when I was, in my 20s, and after my friend's father had passed away, and I called my dad, and I was telling myself that I'm not attached to the outcome. I just want to tell him these things. And when I had the conversation with him, and I could acknowledge that he was dancing, that he was dancing around all of it, I still got off the phone and thought that I was all good now. Like, I was like, yeah, we're all good, and I'm all good now. It's kind of like you were saying, when you said you thought you'd forgiven her, but you realize like, sometimes it takes a little bit for it to happen. So yeah, or it takes a couple of times.
Yeah, I mean, so I bring that up only because there's a lot of, like we talked about, there's a lot of parents or kids who are estranged from their parents.
Yeah.
And some don't want them in their life. Some are just scared. A lot of them are scared to just take the, first step, but kind of want their parents in their life like you do. Is there advice that you would give them? Because you don't. I feel like you need to do something. Because like with your friend, her father passed away, and there's same thing with my cousin. My uncle passed away, and there was no healing. So now she still hates him. I was just wondering, what advice you'd give to someone, because there's a lot of people that might watch this that haven't reconciled with their parents.
Yeah, I mean that's part of it. One thing I would definitely, that comes to mind, is that, don't wait. Is that, because you just never know. Tomorrow's not promised to anybody, and you never know. And once they're gone, and I'm not to say that once they're gone you can't heal, but it's going to be a lot harder. So that's one thing I would say. Don't wait. And I think, I'm a big proponent of therapy. I've done a lot of years of therapy. And so that's, one thing, as someone who's kind of, if you're a child and you've had issues with your parents, and get into therapy to at least start working through some of the wounds and the damage that it's done to you. And if you're a parent and you've done, it's the same thing. Get into therapy to kind of work through these things. And I think we have to try to see where each other's coming from. That, you know, no parent, no human being, I mean, is purposely trying to fail.
Yeah.
You know, they all are trying to do the best they can. But like, you know, like that the ex-boyfriend of my mom's who was really abusive, it's like he was only, you know, mimicking what he knew and what he experienced. And matter of fact, he was mimicking a lesser version of what he knew. He talked about his father just beating the crap out of his, you know, him and his siblings, and like more than one sibling trying to like run away from home, like leave. So he was on some level, he was doing better than what his father had done, but he's a product of what he knew. And he wasn't like, you know, going, I'm setting out to fail. Nobody sets out to fail. So it's like part of it is like trying to get to know your parents' history. Not that it makes an excuse for anything, but I think it creates empathy, you know, and context. And I think you have to be willing to, in a sense, love yourself enough to want better. So that's what's going to force you to like confront your parents, be honest with your parents, to get that other step is to really talk to them. Is that you have to, you know, because if it's not working, if it's not good, you have to decide that no, I want better and I deserve better. But ultimately, it's like, you know, that work started like today, you know, because again, you don't want to be in that place where you lost your parent and now you can't do it. You can't talk to them.
Yeah. Yeah, I've lost, you know, 7 people in 4 years. So, you know, life, you know, um, how did, actually not on my list. How did that, you know, influence how you raise your own kids? You know, I haven't seen the 2 youngest. Well, I've never met the youngest because you moved.
Yeah. You wait till you see them. They're amazing.
But George,
George is like 16 now. I mean, you're going to be like, we were actually just recently looking at pictures of like, looking back at the pictures of the day we left LA, and she looks so little in comparison to what she is now. And, you know, Joe, I mean, all of them, they're just, now she's a very moody teenager. um, um, but I think it's made me like desperately want to be in their lives. Like, you know, my oldest is from a previous marriage, and I couldn't bear the thought of being an absentee dad or part-time dad. And I mean, I'm fortunate that the circumstances worked out in their way, that I was able to get full custody of her, just because of circumstances. But I'm thankful for that. You know, it's also just even like being an actor, like I think made me the actor and the father that I am, in a sense that, you know, even to do Black Lightning, or even to open myself to pilot season and accept shows that might shoot in different states, that it was like I had to, you know, I went to my wife and said, okay, so this is, if we do this, we all go. We all pack up and we go. I'm not going to be the dad that nobody sees. I'm not going to be the husband who's never around, or just a FaceTime dad. So we all go. And then the decision to come back to move back to California is also like, I let my agent, my manager know that I'm like, so until my kids are out of school, like until I'm an empty nester, I can't be a series regular on a show that's not in Los Angeles. In California. Like I won't do that, because I'm not going to just, you know, turn my kids into gypsies, and I'm not going to be the guy that they just don't see, and they only see them on a screen. So that's part of it, that I think it affected me. And also, I think therapy has really helped me because we're all wounded, we're all broken, we all got baggage, and that baggage is unconscious, and so what's it? Oh, yeah, sure. That baggage is unconscious. And so I think therapy helps to make you introspective, so that you can kind of catch it. One example is just like, when we first moved to Atlanta, like none of us liked the idea of moving. We weren't happy. And my oldest was really not happy. And I remember, like, just a matter of years ago, where she would just be, because we thought we might be here till she finished high school, and we're not. But she was like, "Look, when I graduate high school, I'm going back to California. I don't know what you guys are going to do." And I'm like, "No, no, no, we're going to be right there with you." Well, you fast forward, and then she kind of got used to it. So now we're all excited and celebrating we could go home, and she is the one who doesn't want to go home. Like, she wants to stay here. And it just hit me yesterday, because I mentioned that my mother and we moved a lot when I was a kid, not like state to state, but a lot of like just from one apartment to another apartment to another apartment to another apartment, just moving a lot, to the point where I lost count. And my mother was just trying to make it work, and she's not necessarily an introspective person. So she never. It was just like, "Hey, we're moving. Get ready." There was never a moment of like, "This sucks. How do you feel about that?"
Yeah.
How's this? We have to move, but how are you feeling? Like, do you want to talk? Like, that wasn't our dynamic. That wasn't her makeup. And it just hit me literally yesterday, and that I was like, "Oh, I haven't expressed that to my daughter." And oh, I always hated the fact that I couldn't have that conversation with my mom. So it was simple, I went up to her room and I just knocked on the door, and it's just like, "Hey, look, I know, we all know that you don't want to leave, and this sucks. But if you want to talk about it, if you think it'll make you feel better, if you think it'll help, I just want you to know I'm here." And she, just shrugged it off and said, "Okay." But even like today, she seemed like she was in better spirits, and she hasn't come to me to talk about anything, but like she seems a little different. And it was just like, and I don't know if like, and even then, like, it was delayed. Like, I was kind of bummed out that I was like, why didn't it occur to me to have to say that to her sooner? But thankfully it did, and I think it's kind of that lots of years of therapy that brought that about.
All right, well, we'll talk about some lighter stuff. Back to acting. But it's still a lot of stuff that I never knew, So it's,
Oh,
and I feel like the more human we are, the more we can impact the world. The best preaching that.
yeah, without question, man. I mean, for sure. Like, if anything, it's like, like my mistakes or my, if they can at least help somebody, then it makes it better, other than me just living with them.
Anyway, so
On a lighter note,
back to acting. So you mentioned that you knew since you were, I don't know, 7, 6, 5, 4. I don't know how old you were when you. But what was that moment? What was that moment for you when you just like? Was it like during Superman? Because I know that your favorite superhero.
It's interesting. Like, I don't remember the literally exact moment. I do remember. I do have these little like earmarks along the way, but the moment that it happened, I don't remember. Like, I watched lots of film and television, and old movies, and like things that like long before I was ever born. Like, I just grew up watching a lot of this stuff, and I do remember like one odd moment where I was like, oh, I'm a little different. Like was when I was probably about like fifth grade. I'm not sure what the age that would be, but I was like fifth grade, and we had just moved into this new neighborhood, and I was out in the street and meeting kids, because back in the 70s, kids actually played out in the street and met people, and it wasn't called, there weren't play dates. People just actually just went outside, and kids were outside and you played. So I was meeting a bunch of new friends on my block, and we were all trying to decide what to do. And it was all like, what should we do? Should we play hide and seek? Should we do this? Should we do that? And I chimed in, and it sounds just as ridiculous as the moment I said it. I said, let's have a singing contest. And we didn't do that. But it was something that, like, even in the moment after I said it, like, I don't know if it was immediately after that or like a little while, I was like, again, I was an introspective kid where I was like, that was strange. Like, I was aware of the fact that that's not normal. Like, these kids, like, no, who does that? Who wants to have a singing contest? And so that was kind of like one of those moments I was like, oh, you're different. You're different. But I just, I early on, I knew I wanted, it was the best way I could articulate is I wanted to be an entertainer. That's the way I would articulate it, because I grew up watching a lot of the old black and whites, musicals, and when you're talking about black and white, like vaudeville and things like that, it's like everybody was a song and dance man, not just like an actor. And so I just knew I wanted to entertain. So probably at least as early as like fifth grade, actually probably even before that, because like even when I was like in second and third grade, I remember I would race home from school to watch the Monkees on television and sing the songs out loud, and so it was probably as early then. And I just kind of rode that, like, yeah, this is what I want to do. I want to entertain. I want to be this. This is what I want to do for a while. And then suddenly, I think around sixth or seventh grade, it was just this thing where I was like, maybe this is just a phase. Because if you ask kids, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like, every kid wants to be some sort of entertainer. They want to be an athlete or an entertainer. Like, and so I was like, maybe this is just a ridiculous phase. And so then I went through about a year of trying to figure out what else I could do with my life. This is only like, again, this is like seventh grade. And I'm having these thoughts. I was like, okay, I got to figure out something else. And so everything I could, like I was in class, and I was like, we had a computer class for the first time. And I was like, this is interesting. Maybe I want to do computers. I'm just trying to desperately find something. And that lasted for about a year. And then I was like, stop it.
Yeah.
Nope, none of this. This is what you want to do. So it was like, definitely by late seventh grade, eighth grade, I was firmly like, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And everything was geared towards that.
Yeah. So I realized I have way more questions than we have time, so I'm just going to skip. But I do want to talk about.
I'll answer short. I'll be shorter. How about that? I'll speak.
I can stay all night.
I'll give you one word. I'll give you one word answers. Yes. No. Sometimes. Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I wanted to talk about 90210, but a lot of that stuff's online for people if they want to, see how you got the role and how you got started.
Yeah. I mean, you know what? I'm here for you. So like, whatever you're burning or you think that people need to know or want to know, just ask away. We'll get what we get.
Okay. I guess I do want to talk about auditioning a little bit.
Yeah.
Order a little bit, but I think we talked about it once. I think it was you, where you would audition and then you would. Was it you that dropped the sides and the trash on your way out?
Yes. Yeah, that's me. Yeah, I still do that. I mean, it's been forever since we've actually had a physical audition. So now I just delete the emails right after. But I just, And I've always done it that whenever I've had an audition, and even if it like, I mean, even if I knock it out of the park, or if they just say, "We'll see you next time," like they're just raving, no matter what. I don't do it where people can see because I'm not trying to offend them.
Yeah.
But I would put the sides immediately in the trash and keep it moving because it was just I needed to um, let that go. Like I didn't want to take it with me, you know. And I've experienced because also too I've experienced auditions that went amazing
Yeah.
and nothing happened. And I remember distinctly like at this audition, the one and only time I've ever auditioned for a show in New York. I mean, I auditioned in New York because I was in New York at the time. I was doing a Law and Order episode, and it was like that pilot season of whatever year that was. Oh, it was the year when the Super Bowl where Janet Jackson's breast came out. I remember that year because I remember that's where I was when that Super Bowl happened. But I went to this audition for this pilot because my agents were like, "Hey, you're gonna have to audition in New York because while you're there." So I was like, "Cool." So I went to this casting director in New York, and I did my audition, and she had a reader with me, and I knew it went well. Like I was just really happy with how everything clicked. And she just gushed. She was like, "Oh my God, you're amazing." And she's like, "LA is lucky to have you." And so I was just like, "Yeah, so I'm gonna get a call back on this joint." And I finish my job in New York and I come back to LA and I don't hear anything. I'm like, why didn't I hear anything? And my agents reach out and they're like, "Yeah, they said it's not going any further. You made all the wrong choices." And like the casting director was raving. How did this equate to me not even getting a callback? And so I've had those experiences where so like no matter how great it goes, and I'm putting it in the trash and I'm moving on with my life. And if it comes again, then I will pick it, I will print it out again and keep moving forward. But otherwise, I just have to like let it go.
Yeah. And so, what would you tell people, especially starting out that are, going on these auditions, and I think they hold on to it, and they sit by the,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, a big thing I would just tell you, it's like it's you don't take it personal. Like it really just use it as your own playground to practice, to work, to play, and then you have to let it go and don't take it personal. Because I remember there's just a myriad of reasons why an actor doesn't get a job. And as actors, when you don't know, when you're not kind of behind the scenes knowing how the sausage is being made, we are always think that we don't get a job because we suck or we didn't do or we're not good enough. Uh, and I had this like really kind of bird's eye view from a moment when I was doing Hart or Dixie, and one of our actors, he was an actor on the show, but he would also direct some of the episodes, and so he was getting what?
The doctor.
Yes, yes, he was getting ready to direct an episode, and he was trying to cast this like this co-star, and it was just the script. It was just a club owner, like just a club owner, had no physical description, had no age or anything, just club owner. And I remember we're sitting in between shots and he's got the iPad and he's like, "Hey, I'm trying to figure out who I'm going to cast for this role." And before he hands me the iPad to look at, these auditions that people had taped for him, he was like, he laid out already what he was looking for. Like he's like, "I feel like he's got to be this age and he's got to look like this." Da da da. I'm like, okay. So I look at the iPad and just looking at the thumbnail pictures of people, we immediately, but without even hitting play, I'm just like, well, that guy looks too old for what you want. That guy's not what you want. That guy's not what you want. Okay, so let's look at the ones down that are the ones you want, like based on what he had already decided he wanted, right? And then we put play on those, and those are the only ones he watched. And then it was just like, okay, yeah, probably this guy. And I remember leaving that day thinking, oh my God. And I think I even shared it in the acting class at the time because it was just like, those actors who didn't get the job, some of them were going to think, oh, I wasn't good enough. And it was like, no, It had nothing to do with it. He decided he wanted the physical attributes of this character to look like this. So just strictly because of that, these people are now ruled out without even whether they killed it or not. And so there's just all these things that actors we take it personal, when you don't get a job, and it's like, and that's not, and not even to consider the idea of like somebody's more famous or whatever. You just never know. So I think the biggest thing is just an audition is an opportunity to act. It's an opportunity to go play, and don't leave the room or don't press send on that tape until you're happy with it.
Yeah.
Until you're happy with what you did. And then you got to let it go,
And what would you say to the people that, because I think a lot of people are so obsessed with getting that job that they actually forget about life.
Oh, yeah. No, and that's another thing is like, you can't live for this, you have to create a life outside of acting or show business, whether it's writing or directing or anything. You got to create a life outside of it that is joyous and satisfying and meaningful. Because if you're just living for the phone call, if you're just living for the meeting, if you're just living for the audition, and your life sucks all around that, or you're just spinning your wheels waiting for that, dude, life is too short, first of all, and you're just not going to make it. You know what I mean? You're going to crash and burn, because this business is so much of this and that and right and high and this. So you have to have a life that is like full of joy. Whether it's like you love dogs, make sure you got a dog, or you love cats, get a cat, or your personal relationships, your friendships, your family, like hobbies, like all these. You have to create a life that is like fulfilling and amazing, and then let that be what it's going to be.
Yeah, I've just seen too many people in LA who have put life on hold, waiting for them to, be.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
No, I mean, there's sometimes I get into my life. I love my family. Like, I love my family. I love my kids, and I oftentimes, like, I love acting when it's done, when it's under the right circumstances.
Yeah.
I really, really, really love acting, but now I kind of look at it like it's this thing that I put into a room, and it's like it's in this room over here, and I only want to go in that room if it's really worth it. I don't want to go in that room if I don't have to. And it's not because I don't like it. It's just like, I like my life. Like, I like, spending time with my wife and my kids and having dinner together and watching a cool TV show, and, and then getting a good workout in. Like, these are the things that like kind of make me happy, and, you have to create a life, whatever it is. You got to create a life that it's like that almost acting almost interrupts it, or show business almost interrupts it, because otherwise it's just not going to work, man. You are going to, and not to mention that you're just look. There's no guarantee that we're going to make it. There's no guarantee anybody's going to be, So think about, like, if you just spent like 20 years of living that type of life, when you could have spent 20 years of living a really cool life, and the show business still didn't work out. At least you lived a cool life,
Yeah, well, we definitely don't want those fake auditions interrupting your life.
Oh no, fake audit. That's why I'm like, I only want to go in the room if it's worth it.
Yeah. I was saving this for later, but since you talked about how your love for acting, but your faith is also one of the most important things in your life.
Yeah.
And I had a friend recently, a screenwriter, who turned down a writing on a TV show because it kind of went against his morals, his moral code, which, I think about myself, and I'm only hoping that I would have that courage, especially because his career and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
So I guess first, what does your faith mean to you? But also, how does it filter, the kind of roles that you take?
Yeah. I mean, my faith is everything. I'm like, it's everything. It's the foundation, and everything else builds from there. Like, I'm a child of God first, and then from there it informs what kind of father I am, husband I am, friend I am, son I am, actor I am, like all of that. But it starts there. So, and it's a work in progress in the sense of, like, I think over the years I've gotten better at being firm, and not compromising myself. Like, early on I was young, and I was operating out of fear like everybody else, where you're desperately trying to get an agent, and then you get an agent, and then now you're afraid of upsetting your agent, and you're and I used to say yes to things that I knew I didn't want to do and knew I had no business doing, for fear of that. And then you get better, hopefully you get stronger and you get better at saying no. And it was kind of, for me, honestly, it was just a hard fought thing of year by year trying to get better at it. And sometimes it was 2 steps forward and 3 steps back, and or sometimes you look back and go, hey, I was stronger this year than I was last year, right? And then age probably helps, because now I, like, being older, it's just like, well, man, I'm not even trying to do that. So it's and I have to, I guess, you have to let yourself off the hook if you're trying to still move and get better at it. Let yourself off the hook when you don't quite succeed.
Yeah.
But I used to tell my students, you guys can attest to this, that, like, because a lot of times we tell ourselves that, like, um, when you're starting out, or you're only at a certain spot, you feel like you got to compromise yourself, doesn't matter, and you say yes to everything, and then you say, when I get to this level, then I will be that person holding on to my morals. And I was like, no, it's the opposite. Because if you can't be strong in who you are when it's $1,000 job, a $5,000 job, a guest star, or whatever, how are you going to be strong when it's like Steven Spielberg's calling and it's $1 million thing? You're not going to succeed. You're not going to say no. You're not going to succeed. You have to work on that. You have to build that muscle of being who you are on the small things, so that by the time it really, somebody comes to you, like the devil with the contract going, it's a 5-picture deal. You can go, no. Because if you've never done it, then you are going to sign in that line so quickly, and before you know it, it's too late. So I think it's something you have to, you're never too big or too small to be working on it.
Yeah. I even think about the women that said that they'll never do nudity, but rent is due and everything else, and then they just compromise and regret it.
Right. And but also, and I think there's the grace in that it's a work in progress. Because I used to tell myself, like, I've never done nudity, but when I was younger, and I was like, I was like, oh yeah, if it's really artistically relevant, I'll do it. That's what I would tell myself. And then I'd watch things, and I'd see all the instances that I wouldn't do it. And I remember distinctly when I used to watch the show Oz on HBO, the prison show. And it was so gritty and cool. And I remember me and my friend used to talk about it, like, yeah, man, I want to be on Oz, da 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 da. But the thing was that they had this when they did solitary confinement, when they would throw an inmate into solitary, just about every regular actor on the show at some point was thrown into solitary. Solitary was them throwing you fully naked into a room that was just nothing, just a box, concrete floor. So you were just butt naked, thrown in. And I used to tell myself, yeah, if it's artistic, and da da da. And I was watching this and watching this and watching this, and I was like, finally had to come to grips. I'm like, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm not, no, I can't. And then finally, I just finally admitted, I was like, you know what? I got to stop with this artistic thing. I'm never going to do nudity. Let me just now check that off and say, like, you will not get me to do nudity ever. And thankfully I didn't compromise it in some weird, uncomfortable position. But finally, I didn't I eventually came to that is like, that's a deal breaker for me.
But like you said, you also have to forgive yourself for and give yourself grace for, the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not use it as an excuse to keep doing it, but you know.
No, no, not at all. And thankfully, I can always blame it on my wife now. 'Cause I mean, like, I can't do nudity; she won't let me.
Yeah. So, one of the things that people also seem to think is that there's like, lots of money um, in this business, and there is. You have to learn to, um, you know, put enough away for emergency funds and all that, and then other
Yeah,
things happen. There are certain things in your life to where you weren't getting paid your full salary. Um, but so just for people that are struggling in between jobs, because I remember after Heart at Dixie was over, um, you guys were struggling a little bit to, I
a
know
lot of it.
you were
Yeah.
talking about, I might have to go do Uber. And I had a friend that was on a show, and it was really embarrassing for him because he ended up having to deliver pizzas. He's like, "Aren't you from that show?"
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
but you were married and you had kids, so you would have done it if you had to. I know. Um,
Hmm.
but just how do you work through, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, through times like that where
Yeah.
because that
Yeah.
Black Lightning came at the right moment, and that's just
Oh, yeah.
but
I mean, it was a challenging thing. I mean, first of all, it's to do this business is like, like my wife and I, we anybody who's kind of not in it, we refer to them as civilians. Just because it's such a delineation and not even it's a very different life. Like you said, there's not a salary that is coming, and so you have to plan your life in a completely different way. It's like free falling. And um, I remember I was doing Heart of Dixie, and you forget things like uh any check that you get, you know what I mean, from an actor, it's like uh, everybody's got their hands in your pocket. Like you have to think about what do I actually walk away with,
yeah,
and be aware of that because you have Uncle Sam. First of all, he's always going to get his cut. You got agents, you got managers. If you have a lawyer, you have a lawyer. If you decide you want to have a publicist, you got to pay a publicist. Like before you know it, you start to look at this check and you go, what percentage am I actually getting? And it's easy to, if you're easy to not be aware of that, and especially when you're like, I'm a series regular on the show, but you're not really processing like what percentage of each check you're actually getting. And so, for me at the time, I wasn't really processing that. Plus, at the time, I had like alimony and child support, and before I knew it, it was And then I had a dry spell, just an acting dry spell. It just, I finished a series and went through some lean times, and so yeah, we were flat broke, not just broke. We was like flat broke, where I remember Christmas came around and we were like, I don't know if we can do Christmas. Like, can we get a tree? I don't know. And there were times when we were like, I don't know how we're going to make it. And again, I give it up to God. And because we still don't know, there were times like this happened more than once where I would go to the mailbox and there was an envelope and it was not addressed. Like, we don't know who did it, but there was a check in the mail, that helped us out. And still to this day, we don't know who. We assume it was one of our friends, but we don't know who. And and it was just, kind of like going through the desert. Lots of prayer, lots and lots and lots of prayer, lots of weeping and gnashing of teeth, um, and but in the midst of it, we also kind of changed our spending habits and our eating habits, and discovering like how are we not being wise financially. One of the things, like we were eating out a lot, like takeout and things like that, and we had to discover like, oh, wait a minute, Like, no, it's cheaper to buy groceries, and it's cheaper to buy groceries and cook, and it's cheaper to buy groceries and cook and eat, like make a meal and eat that till it's done. Like take those days, like all these different things that we learn to like, and let, you know, no, let's not live by credit cards and let's do, but we were, I mean, we were broke. Like it was like to the point where, you know, all the credit cards were maxed out and I was avoiding phone calls and we were like struggling. And then when I got Black Lightning, um, and we had to move to Atlanta, like we didn't have all the money to even move to Atlanta. So I had to like borrow money from my in-laws to be able to come to Atlanta and like live until Black Lightning checks started coming. And you know, but I was extremely blessed because it's like in a matter of years, like I paid them back. You know, credit card debt went away, and you know, in a much better place with the new lessons of like how do you be a good steward of your finances,
Yeah.
and take those lessons of when we were flat broke. But it's you know, it was tough, but again, it was a great, you know, faith journey because there were times when I just didn't know how we were going to make it, and it was just all I could do was pray, you know, and I can look back on it and go, well, we obviously made it. We, you know, and try to use that as fuel when things are tough now.
Yeah, I kind of want to do a financial podcast for entertainment industry, or even just anybody, just because
Yeah.
following the Dave
It's a
Ramsey.
different way of living. It's a different, you know, it's feast or famine. Suddenly you have a lot of, you know, you have some good strokes, and then but then those may not last forever, you know. So
Yeah, it's just an epidemic of people living paycheck to paycheck and not knowing where
yeah,
their money goes, not having a budget, not having an emergency fund. So I kind of
yeah,
want to be able to teach people that stuff.
yeah, yeah.
I do want to ask, just for my own curiosity. I guess we could talk about it another day. But working on Nash Bridges, how was that? I mean, how was it working with Don Johnson and Cheech Marin? I mean, I have to imagine there was lots of. I actually want to hear a funny story too, if you have one. Working on working with them.
Yeah. Okay. So
Favorite shows.
it was not my favorite experience. I'll tell you that. And it was kind of interesting because so typically when you audition for, if you're going to be a series regular like on a show, you're going to audition. There's steps you go through, right? If you have an audition, eventually you're going to audition in front of producers, but that's not even the final step. Eventually, then you're going to audition in front of like the studio and the network, and that's like those are going to be the final steps. And I remember distinctly, I went into audition for the producers, and I finished, and they just came out and said, "Job's yours." I was like, "Wait, what?" And I'm fully expecting there's other. Wait, I'm gonna have to come back. They're like, "Job's yours," and they said, "Don Johnson is difficult. San Francisco is beautiful. Don Johnson is difficult. Have a great time." And that was probably telling about what was going to happen, because I got the job and it was great. You know, I was making, because I was just like a series regular, and I knew I had signed a 2-year contract, because it was like the end of the series. And prior to that, I had done a pilot that we got picked up and we did like 6 episodes, then we got canceled. This was like going to be like the longest situation I had. But I go to San Francisco, and this show had been on for a long time, and it was a nightmare. Um, no, I don't want to like throw people, but there was drug addiction running rampant. Um,
Such a lot
um,
of stress.
oh, tons of stress. There was, I watched a person, like I worked, and then probably within a couple of days I was working, there was a moment when Don Johnson blew up. Like he just started railing at people, just going off and just yelling and losing his mind. And I was just like, what is going on? And I just kind of stood back, and it happened. And then, it went away. And then I went to my co-star who'd been on the show from the very, very beginning. And I'm like, hey, so what was that? And I just kind of stood back and he's like, yeah, that happens. But it never happens to actors. So just stand back. Like, okay. Um, I witnessed an actress who I'd seen working on the show. We finished the week, we come back for the weekend, or we come back on a Monday, and she came into the trailer and looked like she had gotten like been rode hard and put away wet. Like I didn't know what she was just she like physically looked like really, really bad, and found out she had a huge cocaine addiction and that had been going on for a long time. And then we were doing that. And then at one point they brought somebody like a handler, like a drug counselor, to basically babysit her.
Yeah.
And at no point did they ever say like, go get help. Like, let's write you off the show for a period of time, go get help. It was just like they brought somebody on who was going to follow and watch her, and she was fine. Then he was, we're in San Francisco. He was from LA. He flew home just to see his family. And suddenly the next day, they couldn't get her out of her apartment. And so they had to they had to get him on the phone and say, you need to fly back here and deal with this. And so I was witnessing that. I was witnessing, Don Johnson just not showing up for work, just like for a week, and not even like, I'm not going to come to work for a week. First of all, it was already set up where he didn't work on Fridays and he didn't work on Mondays. Like he had it, he was like, that was law.
Yeah.
So he only had to work Tuesday through Thursday. And it wasn't like he just didn't show up for a week. It was like, we got to work. We waited. So, okay, I guess he's not showing up. So let's try and shoot this. And we'd shoot around. You go to work the next day. He doesn't show up. We wait. Okay, well, he's not showing up today. And we just, it was every cliche, like bad Hollywood cliche, all rolled into one show. And I stepped in on it, and the crew, who were just happy to have jobs, were just like, hey, this has actually been the best year we've had. Like, so it clearly had been even worse than that. And within a few months, I was just like, I can't do this. I don't want to do this anymore. And I was like, I called my manager and I said, hey, you need to let them know I'm going to do my best to finish this year, but I can't do this like after this. And the word came back was like, yeah, well, we don't, let's wait and see if we get another year. And I had to go back. I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, if you get another year, you can start rolling and I won't be here. Like, I'm not ever coming back to this joint. And I broke down into tears my last day. When I left at the end of that season, like, I remember driving away, and I remember like driving away back to my like corporate apartment. I'm looking back behind me going, did I really finish? Am I really done? And then as soon as I got to my corporate apartment, I'd already packed my bags. Like, I was ready to leave that day to drive back to LA. As soon as I got to my apartment, I just burst in tears because it was like, I made it. I survived. Like, I made it through this horrible experience. So it was, it was not good. Just put it that way.
Well, how was Cheech at least? Was he?
I mean, he was a nice guy. Like, there was nobody like again, the actors, like, even Don was not ever not nice to actors, but he just knew, he was very technically savvy. So he knew camera, he knew lights, he knew things. And he would just come in and he just wanted to bust, as he even put it, bust people's balls. And he would come in, and because I remember one point, like, he was going off and somebody's like, no, we got it. And I heard him say, because I just like to bust their balls. And he had, with a big cigar, he had it, he said. And there was lots of drugs that were rampant. And like, again, the show had been on for a long time. I did the very last year. So the drug abuse had happened for a while. And this was just the dysfunctional climate. Cheech was a cool cat. They were all like, nobody was not nice. Cheech was cool. But it was just a very dysfunctional place that people were tolerating because they just wanted a job.
Well, they're talking about bringing the show back.
Yeah, I saw that, and I was like,
I guess you won't be on it.
people were like, hey, did anybody call you? I'm like, no, they didn't, and they know better, not to.
Yeah.
I mean, it rocked my world. It was the first time ever where when I finished a job, I needed a break.
Yeah.
Like where I was like, I need to step away from acting for a little bit.
Yeah. But I remember you telling, I don't know, I went on, visited you twice on Heart of Dixie. And I'm
Yeah.
trying to remember if you told me or if I witnessed it myself. But I remember one of the crew just saying, we're just so happy you're here because, you have this personality, this the smile that just lifts the room. And I remember saying, we're just so glad you're here because it's been hard.
Yeah.
Did you find that to help the set on Nash Bridges at all?
Well, I think I was new to sets, and I think honestly that the experience with Nash Bridges informed like my life, and it informed like how I am on, how I was on Hart of Dixie and anything else after that. In the sense that because the dysfunction, like what I was having a hard time with was watching people like crew members who work harder than any actor.
Yeah.
They're there all the time. They're there before you get there, and they're there after you've left, and they work all the time, crazy hours.
Yeah.
And watching these people get yelled at and mistreated drove me crazy because like these are people who, on some level, feel like they can't defend themselves. Like they're defenseless, and so just the hours that people are on set, especially crew. Oftentimes they're on set, they're on sets more than they're with their families. And so it just informed me that it's like, this has got to be fun, man. Like this has got to be a good place to be for everybody. Everybody's got to be able to enjoy themselves and feel safe, and enjoy themselves. And so I think that informed, that negative experience informed how I like kind of go into life, went into life in all my jobs after that. And I hope to continue to do that. Like, I don't want people to feel powerless. I don't want people to feel scared. I want people to feel unsafe. And I certainly, if they're going to be someplace 12 hours minimum, and I do mean minimum a day, you should enjoy it, you know?
Yeah, you should enjoy what you do
Yeah.
and the people you're with. Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess that's the silver lining of an experience like Nash Bridges, was that like it helped, because I'd also been on other sets and worked with other actors and lead actors and situations where they were a joy. They were sweet. And I was like, so you don't have to be this way. Like, you can be a serious actor, do good work, and also be a joy to be around.
I just find those people are just trying to fill some kind of hole that,
Yeah.
or
For sure.
it's hard to really know what they're thinking. All right, let's just talk about Black Lightning really quick. You've already talked about kind of on other interviews, so we don't have to talk about it today, but being the first Black TV superhero.
Yeah.
I do want to talk a little bit about representation because I had a conversation recently with someone who says that it's not important.
Wait, you had a conversation where someone said it's not important?
Yeah, he said it's not important. He's not white, but he's this one he wasn't white, but he was a person of color, not black, but he's just said, just use your imagination. So okay. I just kind of wanted to ask you why representation matters to you.
Yeah.
That because we don't. Well, what did I write? That we don't see. It's important to see people that look like us.
Yeah. That's interesting. I would love to have met that and to. That's interesting. I mean, it's kind of twofold. Like, I mean, I guess because I don't know the person and we haven't like talked, so I can understand. Like, look, growing up, I talked about as a kid, I watched a lot of movies and television and a lot of old movies and a lot of old television. So subsequently, obviously, you can deduce that I didn't see myself a whole lot. And I did use my imagination. And, when I would watch Jerry Lewis, Dean Martin movies, for some reason, I identified with Jerry Lewis. I was always like, when I watched Bob Hope, Bing Crosby movies, I identified with Bob Hope. Like, and like the outsider, the buffoon, or whatever. So I had to use my imagination. I understand that. But the self-esteem that's built from seeing yourself. First of all, it's just I just think film and television needs to reflect the world. Like it's our job is to entertain, illuminate, educate, inspire, but we got to be a reflection of the world. And so the world is not all one color. The world is not all one type of person. So if the representation is not accurate, then we're not doing our job.
Yeah.
Like it's just not. We're not doing our job. That alone, not to mention it, and then what you're saying to the people to especially to children that then become adults, teenagers and adults. What you're saying is you don't matter.
Yeah.
You're not worth it, or you're a prop. You're a device for the person who matters. You know what I mean? When every film or television show is about a white man, a white male, and then we throw some other people in the midst, it's almost like they're just devices for the person for the white male. You're a prop for the white male. You're a device for the white male. And what does that do to the psyche of human beings on both sides?
Yeah.
To a person of color, it's telling you that you don't matter, that you're less than, that yeah, you may go out in the world and you go to the grocery store and you're on your roads and you're in school and you see, all this representation, you see people who look like you, but that's fake. You really don't matter. You're a second-class citizen. That's what it's saying. And then to the white male, it's saying you're everything. Like you can do no wrong. You're God. Both are inaccurate and extremely damaging, and so no representation matters, because and it's not even like I don't want it to be disproportionate.
Yeah.
I just want it to reflect the actual world. I mean, you remember when we have our little Wednesday night dinners, and I remember Kristen, my wife, saying, who's like Italian, she would talk about like how amazing it would be, because we had this like almost United Nations Bennington ad of people around a table eating food from different ethnicities, different ages, different walks of life, faith, whatever. We're having these dinners, and she would talk about how like there would be frequently, and this is before we were dating, but she was like, there's frequently times when I'm at the dinner table and I'm like the only white person at the table, and she's like, and it's awesome. Like it's really cool to experience that. And so if that's what the world looks like, then that's what our art should look like. It just should. I don't representation matters greatly. It matters if we get it right. I don't want it to be like suddenly, every show is a black show. That's not right, because that's not what the world looks like. I just want it to be accurate.
Yeah, me too. So I've been noticing on comments, and a lot from Black people, just saying, they're tired of the slavery movies and they just want to see Black people in normal life. Cosby Show.
Yeah.
But it seems like it feels like, I don't know if it's just the white people trying to make up for it, or trying to pay penance in the wrong way. But I I mean, I think we need to know our history, but we also need to have like the Cosby Show, or you know, or Heart of Dixie, even. You know.
Yeah. No, I mean, Hart Dixie was a great benefit. I mean, I love the fact that, it was, I mean, that I was in it, but even a lot of our guest cast, it was kind of multicultural, and it it just was. It didn't try to make a big deal out of it. It just is like, this is just because it was kind of depicting this almost like Mayberry life, like this idealistic life. And it's like, so, this idea of like in this idealistic life, we all just live together and we don't have any problems. Like we don't have any hangups with any of this. And so yeah, I mean, again, we just want art to really kind of depict life and be a mirror for life. And if you want to be really responsible, help guide us to a better place. Like not don't take us backwards, help lead us to something better. In addition to at least just showing the truth, like just at least let's like try to show the truth. And I think we fall short of that. And I honestly, I'm not a fan of even like segregated television. I know it has its place, but typically a lot of time I call segregated television that typically we decide that we need more diversity, but we do this segregated thing where we're like, we'll create a Black show, we'll create an Asian show, we'll create a Hispanic show, and it's like, you have your show now. And you have your show now, and you have your, and I know that has its place, but that can't be everything. Like to me, like I look at it, like I remember there was a huge moment when I first started watching the television show Lost, right? And which was a very diverse show, and I applauded in that way. But I was as I was watching it, I was like, yeah, this is good. This is good. That it's like it's a diverse show. But I was like, the next step now in the evolution of all of this is to have a Lost like show where the Jack Shepherd character is not the white male. Maybe he's Black, maybe he's Hispanic, maybe he's Asian, maybe he's some other race. That because it was still like, even though it was a very culturally diverse show, you still knew the story of the formula of like the female lead and the Black lead. I mean, the female lead and the male lead were white male, white female. Like, okay, we're getting there, but now the next evolution is to now let those characters be whatever they may be. Spin the ethnic wheel and let them be whatever they may be. And we haven't gotten there yet, and I hope we do.
A friend of mine, Bill, actually asked if you thought Black Lightning was a Black show, or did you consider it like what do you classify Black Lightning as?
Well, I mean, truthfully, like, yeah, I would. When I read the first script, I guess when you're doing a show as an actor, like if you're doing a movie and you read a script, that's all you have. Like that's what you're doing. You look at it and you're like, this is the beginning, middle, and end. This is what I'm doing. When you're doing a television show and you read just episode 1 as an actor, and as an actor you have to then, like, you can maybe have meetings and talk with people, but you have to like project what you think it's going to be. But you don't know, because you don't know what it's going to be at the end of season 1, 2, 3, and 4. So when I read episode 1, I didn't necessarily see it as a Black show. I had hoped that we were going to be more. But I got to be honest, as we went along, that if I now after the fact I look at it, I'm like, yeah, it was a Black show. That's just what it was. It has its place in history. I think it was very important to have it in the world, for sure. But I'm always into like evolving and going, okay, we've done that. Now let's evolve. Let's get to the place where, I mean, as an actor, I just want to get to the place where literally roles are open and just the best actor gets the job. And it doesn't matter what color their skin is.
Yeah.
You know, I remember my wife and I were talking recently about, I was like, what if the character Breaking Bad, like, you know, a show that I really like, what if, I mean, and don't get me wrong, Bryan Cranston like did an amazing job. But I was just like, because he was a chemistry teacher, right? Who has cancer and like goes on. He's a suburban chemistry teacher. I'm like, what if Walter White was an Asian man? And I was like, and you wouldn't have had to change a single bit of dialogue. Like, you don't have to suddenly go, oh, we're going to make him Asian and we're going to change it and do this. You wouldn't have to say, do anything. And I'm like, that adds another layer of dimension to that.
Yeah.
And I just want to get to that point, you know, where it's just, we think about those things.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, and I don't know if it's true, if we're digressing in some ways, because I just remember as a kid, my babysitter was black, but that's the only black person I knew until junior high, and there was only one black kid named Andre in junior high, and then in high school, there was like maybe 5, Irvin being one of them. But I just remember I'm just going back, and I think I see color more now than I did as a kid, and I think it's partly because of a lot of these movies and shows. It's like back then, watching The Cosby Show and other shows, even Perfect Strangers, you know, with what's her name that ended up being on what was it called? Family Matters. But I'm just wondering. But I'm trying, and I've spent some time trying to figure out why I see color now when I didn't in high school. It's like we were just, we were all just friends, just, I mean, we saw the color of our skin, but we didn't see color. So
I think part of that is, well, it's funny because it's interesting that you bring up the Cosby Show, because I think about the Cosby Show, and I remember it was like groundbreaking. It may not be, we can. We have to separate Bill Cosby from the Cosby Show, which is really, I mean, challenging, but also interesting to see, like, okay, a human being could be so deplorable in one part of life, but can also still contribute something positive in another way. It's interesting. But like the Cosby Show was this anomaly. I mean, if you think about it, it was a mega hit at the time, like a mega hit. But yet nothing spawned from it, that no copycats, no Cosby Show clones spawned from it. And I think that says something, because historically television will establish a hit. Like, I remember when Friends came out, and it was a huge hit. And after that, a whole bunch of Friends wannabe clones were trying to be produced and made and coming about. But the Cosby Show, again, a mega hit that didn't spawn any other clone. It didn't spawn change either. Like, because when we talk about it, we talk about something that was so long ago, not something that like has spawned change today. So I think it's interesting. But the thing is I think when you're talking about being aware of race, is I think that what we're experiencing right now is, I think at least what white America might be experiencing right now, is what's always been for Black America or people of color, but now we have cell phones and social media to show you. Because I mean, the things that we are seeing are, for me, not brand new, and for me, not like it's getting so much worse. For what we're seeing, I'm seeing is something that, like, no, this is unfortunately the way it's always been. But we have cell phones now, and we have cameras now, so that everybody else can see it. And so because everybody else sees it now, race is on your mind. But it's always been there. You know what I mean? There weren't any cameras when Emmett Till was savagely killed.
Yeah.
There weren't any cameras for all those lynchings. You know, there weren't any cameras during those times. And so we as black people knew that this stuff existed. You know, but now cameras show that everybody can see it now. And so it's new for other people, but we're going, no, this is unfortunately the way we live our lives.
Yeah. Well, I think I bring up the Cosby Show for me personally because it humanized people of color before I actually met
Yeah.
people of color. And so by the time I met someone of color, it's like I already knew them, and I just didn't see anybody different.
Well, it was profound. I mean, it was profound for everyone because I remember, you know, for me, as we talked about as extensively with my father, like watching the Cosby Show was like, I was like, I want my dad. I want my dad to be that guy. Like I want, you know, also watching these parents that like, as a poor kid, I'm like, these people are rich. Why aren't they buying their kids every single thing they want? Like, I'm like, they're rich. And that was, you know, but what was interesting is like, you know, we have a mutual friend, Emily, who's just a white girl, you know, an all-American white girl who was like, I wanted Bill Cosby to be my father. Like, so it transcended everything because it was just so universal. But even on another level, like it was a thing, you know, not even just race, but it was like, I look at the Cosby Show because so many times throughout history, the sitcom trope of men and women is like, you know, of a husband and wife. It goes all the way back to the honeymooners, where it was just like it seemed like they were more opponents and they hated each other. And other than the kiss at the very end, you didn't see them love each other. Like they were just more just pom pom pom. You're like, do they actually? Like it was like that whole my old battle axe, old ball and chain trope that is prevalent in most sitcoms. The Cosby Show, if you watch it, like they use it a little bit, but like they really loved each other. Like you see them, like you get a sense that they love each other. They love each other physically, emotionally. And then they use it like a tiny, tiny, tiny bit. That little trope where it's like you watch these two people and you go, why are they married? Like they seem to hate each other. She thinks he's stupid. You know, and he thinks she's a nag. What is this going on? But you know, the Cosby Show, it went above that, and maybe it's just too hard. Maybe people can't write.
Probably.
Like, you know, maybe it's the idea that like I remember our friend David Greco, who's a singer songwriter, and he's like, it's easier to write a breakup song. It's easier to write a sad song than it is to write a really good love song. Because it's hard to write a good love song and not be sappy and cheesy, whatever. It's like, so maybe people can't write a comedy. It's too hard to write a comedy where they actually love each other. It's easier to write a comedy where they just hate each other.
Actually, I think what was Tim's show did it pretty well. Home Improvement, I thought they did that pretty well. I think you could tell that they love each other on that one.
I mean, some of them, you know, like, I mean, Roseanne did it okay for a period of time. You could definitely get a sense of them loving each other, but like a lot of times it's like the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah. Cosby Show,
and they just keep beating up on each other.
But the Cosby Show makes me remember A Different World. Remember that one where she went to college?
Yeah.
That one I think they did diversity pretty well. It might have
I mean, for me, again, and going back to the idea of why representation matters, because like the age I was when A Different World was out there, it was so important for me to see those characters. Like I wanted to be Dwayne Wayne. Like I was just like, I went and got a bunch of circle. I didn't even wear glasses at the time. I had perfect 20/20 vision. And I was so annoyed that I had 20/20 vision because I wanted the flip up glasses like Dwayne Wayne. And I was just like, because it was like seeing these like, you know, upwardly mobile, intelligent, you know, Black people going to college. Which was something I was like, yeah, I'm going to do that. It was important to see.
Yeah, and all the different colors got along.
And all the different colors, but also all the different types of people. You know what I mean? You had like kind of the hippy dippy girl who was like really kind of crunchy grew granola. You had all these different types of Black people, because a lot of times it's like we're put into a box where like we only can be this. We're, you know, and we have to wear baggy jeans and we got to listen to hip hop, and, and it's like, no, I'll listen to the Eagles just as much as I'm gonna listen to a Tribe Called Quest. That's just who I am.
Yeah.
Like, and so when we see those different shades and different aspects of people of color, it humanizes them. You use the term, it humanizes them, because if you think about it, like, I don't know if you're aware of this as like being a white person, but it's like nobody ever questions your whiteness.
Yeah.
If you could be British and nobody's going to be like, oh, why do you talk that way? You're not being white. You could be an Okie from the Skokies and have like a thick mountain accent, and nobody's going to go, oh, what are you doing? That's not being white. You could be Eminem from Michigan and be a hip hop guy, and they're like, oh, that's not being white. Like, your whiteness is never ever in question.
Yeah.
Ever. There's really nothing you can do, except for like, maybe to some of those right-wing extremists, do anything that would put your whiteness in question. As a Black person, and I would imagine it's the same for other people of color, there's these little parameters, these boxes that it's like, well, if you listen, I don't listen to a lot of country music, but if I was like a dude who listened to country music, be like, what? If I was a person who was really into ballet, as a Black man into ballet, it's like, what? You're not Black enough. If I talk a certain way, you're not Black enough. If I dress a certain way, you're not Black. Like, my Blackness is being called into question all the time.
I think that's why Bill Duke did that documentary. Did he talk to you about the skin color documentary, Women of Color?
No, he didn't.
Yeah, he did one a few years ago. So we talked about that a little bit, and it's just, how there's even prejudice within the Black community, based on skin color.
Right, we put ourselves in a box, and I would imagine that it's probably, in the Hispanic community, in the Asian community, it's like we put ourselves in a box and we're not allowed to step out of it. And if we step out of it, then our Blackness is questioned. And I'm like, no, I look around and I see like white people can do whatever they want and they're still white. So can I do whatever I want and still be Black?
Yeah. And do you have any, I remember I watched an interview with you just to kind of,
Yeah.
And you talked about, just different people coming up to you, an 8-year-old boy who was bullied in the Comic-Con. But do you have any like specific stories, just the kind of any Black children that came up to you, to where, kind of just hit home for people that don't think representation matters, to where, it just kind of maybe touched your heart a little bit, to like, this is what.
Well, I definitely, I've had like, especially living in Atlanta, I had countless stories. I do remember one being at a grocery store when a little Black boy, I was at the grocery store and he looked up and saw me and he was just like frozen. He was just like, he was just, and it was, and then I saw him outside and his grandmother was like, he was with his grandmother and she's like, I don't really know who you are. I'm like, it's okay, he does. And it was really, I was happy because I just thought about the character of Jefferson Pierce, and to see him recognize, he knew me from Black Lightning, and it was like, I was really proud that, because Jefferson Pierce as a human being is a family man who fights for his family. He's a principal and who is a advocate of education. Like, he's just lined with positive attributes. And I was really proud of that this kid saw me, and those positive attributes are now being pushed on to him. But one thing is really even was unexpected for me was, like I said, I live in Atlanta, and in this house that we were living in the neighborhood, people kind of know that I'm an actor. Some people know. It's a small, it's small town. It's not LA. And so I was downstairs working out, and this was recently, like during COVID and mask wearing and all this. I was downstairs working out, and my wife comes out. She's like, "Hey, there's this kid and his friend at the door, and they came to the door and they were like, they were wondering if Black Lightning lives here, and they're just so cute, and can you please just come up and say hi? I'm like, yeah, sure. And I go upstairs, I go to the front door, it's two white kids, two white boys. And I was amazed. Like I was, she didn't say anything about who they were. She just said, these kids are at the door. I fully expected to see two Black kids at the door. It was two white kids, and they were so excited and nervous and all of that. And so that was also very, a proud moment and exciting and surprising.
Yeah. Well, I actually saw Bill Cosby as a dad too, sort of, because of my, the absence of my own dad. So I did see that, and I do remember wishing. So I can see that, and it just hit me that there are kids watching that, from fatherless homes, who are probably wishing that you were their dad. White
Yeah.
hat, all colors.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like a lot of us white boys, wished
Yeah.
Cosby was our dad.
I guess that's going back to the guy who says diversity doesn't matter. It's like they're just using their imaginations.
Yeah.
Representation doesn't matter.
So I have one more question.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of screenwriters that watch. What do you look for when you read a script? Like if, what would you want to do next? Not that we're going to write something, but it's always important to know what actors are looking for. We want.
Yeah. I mean, as far as what I want to do next, that's a hard one. I mean, because I want to do everything within reason. And so, but I can tell you, at least from my standpoint, what I look for is like, I love acting because the psychology and the behavior aspect. And so as for me, I look for dimension, and as an actor, we're looking for hooks. If you read a script and if you're thinking about a character, you're looking for a hook. Like you're looking like, okay, how do I wrap my mind around this character? Like, what's my hook? So, and those hooks are more easily prevalent in flaws.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of it, whether it's the hero or the villain, and dimension. And then the biggest thing is consistency for me, consistency is that as you're reading a script and you're following a character, you're trying to track who they are, what they're about, that the journey is consistent. If they're going to deviate, we have to see the justification for that deviation. People don't just suddenly somebody's a racist. They're not suddenly, if they're a racist on page 5, they're racist on page 50. They don't suddenly I'm not a racist now. It's like, it just like, so like behavioral consistency, because I even my shows I've been on, like I'm just the logic police, because I watch a lot of television and a lot of film. Like, I mean, I've grown up on it, and I'm addicted to it. And so when something doesn't track, when something's like you're watching and you're like, yeah, and all of a sudden something just goes off the rails just for the sake of plot, or just for the sake that it's more interesting or whatever, but it doesn't track from a human standpoint of the character that you've established, it just throws you off. It throws me off, and I'm out, and I'm hitting the pause button, and I'm going, what is that? what? And then I gotta like process it, and then hit play again and try to get back into it. So I mean, I think it's just the tracking, the consistency of the character, and even if the character is the hero still gotta have flaws. If the character is the villain still gotta have a little bit of light, because we use Bill Cosby is a great example. Like, he's a kind of perfect example, because look, in this story of life, he's a villain right now. He's the villain. But even as a villain, he did some good somewhere down the before. So it's that perfect thing. Like, yeah, the villain can't be like, oh, I'm just 100% bad. We got to see that a little light, you know. And then with the hero, you got to have, you know, a little grit. Go with the gravy. It's just, but there's just got to be consistency, because a lot of times I think for the sake of convenience, um, things get tossed and characters suddenly start going in a direction you think they'd never go, just because it juices up a plot.
Yeah. Janya had a question. It looks like she left, but then she can come back and
Do
watch.
you read the question, or do you
Yeah.
have it?
Well, it's on the comments. She just says, as the acting lead, how much influence did you have over the stories in Black Lightning? Did you ever offer ideas for stories? Or did you have any input over?
I didn't really. So
Go to the chat. You can see excited chat.
yeah, I didn't see that. I didn't have. I had influence over maybe tweaking things, like after they were done, after the script was written, and if something didn't. Oh, I just okay. Um, I had influence over if something didn't seem consistent, and I could kind of tweak things or cut things or whatever. But as far as forming the stories, I didn't. Not in Black Lightning.
Yeah.
Like I got scripts, and I would read them, and the things that didn't make sense or that didn't track, I would try to speak up for and try to fix those things. But as far as forming it, I didn't. Now, like Hart or Dixie was interesting because I remember at the end of season one, we finished season one, and the showrunner Lila was really awesome. She came to every actor and sat down, like set up little mini meetings with every actor and said, hey, do you have any ideas about where you want to see your character go in season two, or thoughts? And one of the things I brought up, like I gave her several ideas. One of them was like the character going through a re-election, and so that plot, that storyline made it into the second season. But Black Lightning, no, it was just kind of trying to fix things on the fly.
Um, so most of the CW shows, I actually was wondering, do you know why they canceled it after 4 seasons versus, a lot of them got 6, 7 seasons, you know?
I don't know. I think our ratings weren't honestly the best. They just weren't. I mean, it's a numbers game. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. They weren't that our ratings weren't that great. And so I would imagine that's probably the reason, really. I mean, it's, show business is a business, and honestly, television, people don't really realize this, but television was made to sell product. Like television, when you think about television, we watch it now. All we do is watch the shows, watch the shows. Television was about commercials. It was about sponsorship. It was about selling. Like the shows that we watch were just the filler to sell you Lucky Strike cigarettes and this and that. That's what television was about. So, and at the heart of it, that's still what it's about. So I just, I know that our ratings, when we started like season one, I think we started pretty good. But then they just kind of plummeted. So I would imagine that's why, we had the run that we had. I'm not particularly heartbroken, because I want to get my family home.
Yeah, I know.
And my mother lives in California, and I want to be near her. And, she's like in her 70s, and, not getting any younger, and she needs to see her grandkids. So I mean, honestly, kind of like, yay, okay, we're going home.
Are we going to see Black Lightning again? Have you heard anything about them coming back on any other?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's already been talk, like, the people, at The Flash, the television show The Flash, have already reached out and want me to do a couple episodes with them, because I, did the crossover last year and had a really good time with them, and so I think that's going to happen. Do a couple episodes over there. Also, I'm doing a kind of a small independent film this summer in July, and then developing a couple of things. We'll see. So.
All right. Does anyone, we lost most of our audience, does anyone have any questions for Cress before we let them go?
Hi. Can you hear me?
You're, no, something wrong with your,
The mic is doing something funny.
Okay, hold on. Let me get my headphones.
you want to put yourself on mute? Okay.
Is that me? Do I need to put myself on mute? No. Okay.
Does anyone else have a question while he works on his, no questions, Maisha?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you, though. This is very informative, and I can relate to like everything you were saying about the family situations and moving the
Yeah,
kids.
I saw in the
Yeah.
in the chat. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I would tell you that kids are resilient, and giving and trying to give them a space to at least express themselves. That's the biggest toughest thing, is like getting, like when I talked to my daughter last night, it wasn't necessarily that I had, expressing it in a way that like, we're doing this, you can't necessarily change it, but I want you to be able to express yourself at least, is kind of, it's still important. And I think it's still helpful, but yeah, I feel your pain.
Okay, you can try again, Farouk.
Okay, does that work?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I echo that. Thank you so much for everything that you've told us. It's nice to know that you can go through something with parents and stuff like that, and it's actually, you use the word humanize, normalize, whatever, but it is a normal thing, because I've been through stuff with my parents too, and it's just not fun. It's just not fun. But no, the thing that I wanted to ask was actually going back to audition type stuff. Do you find that your resume matters, or is it just what happens on the day? Like, do you think that do the casters, do they read your resume even, or is it just how you perform in that audition itself?
I think most of the time it is really the audition. I think the resume is like really more of a calling card. Like a resume can get you an opportunity, like an audition that you may not normally get. But it's always going to be about what you do in that moment. It's more on the day. Like a resume might get you in the room, but even what you do in the moment, because everybody's trying to it's like, people who, when they say, when a guy is not that attractive and he's got really a hot girlfriend, he's like, dating out of his league or whatever. Like when it comes to casting, everybody's trying to swing out of their league, So, if they can get somebody more famous than you, they're going to try to do it, but I think basically, I think it's like the resume can get you, hopefully, if it's a good resume, it can get you an audition. But I don't think a resume will really get you a job.
Okay. And while I've got you, just the other thing that I wanted to ask was that, do you know, or have you had any opportunities to get on Godfather of Harlem?
I haven't, no, not yet. I mean, because I've been on Black Lightning. We just finished like about a month ago. So
Yeah.
things like that have been really not they haven't been afforded me. I've been working. So we'll see now that I'm a free agent.
Okay.
I mean, I've worked with Forrest Whitaker a long time ago, and I know he's a really nice guy.
Do you keep in contact?
No. I mean, it was like we were both on the same movie. We didn't have any scenes together, but he just and we. It's interesting because like we've crisscrossed a bit. Like we didn't have any scenes together, so I met him briefly, and he seemed really nice. And I worked at a theater a long time ago in California in Topanga Canyon called the Theatricum Botanicum, and they used to talk about him because he had done plays there before I got there, and I did a play there. So, but no, I haven't like kept in touch.
Oh, thank you, Chris.
Yeah, no problem.
Any questions, Sydney?
No questions for me, but I also felt really called out with the whole parent stuff. So thank you so much for sharing your experience. It really helped me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you for. I mean,
Yeah.
thank you for being here. Thank you.
All right. Well, I appreciate it, Chris.
When are you coming back to? How long are you going to be in Houston?
We went way over, but I might be here till January. I don't know.
Oh wow. Okay.
And I'll be back in October for a Metallica concert.
Seriously?
Yeah. I'll be back for a couple weeks. So I'll definitely come and stop for dinner and Wednesday night or whenever we do our
Yeah,
dinner.
yeah. We got to. We haven't decided on the day of the week we're gonna do it again yet. But like, yeah, definitely when you're back, let me know.
Yeah, I'm excited. And the only other question, which has nothing to do with this, but Dan is still short 2 actors. Dan Lauria, Dan Lauria? The Wonder Years?
Oh, the new Wonder Years.
Yeah, no, the original New Year Wonder Years.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Dan Lauria. He also acted with, who was the actor you just mentioned? Forrest Whitaker.
Forrest Whitaker. Yeah.
Do you remember that old movie, Stakeout?
Wait, is that the one with Billy Crystal? And no.
No, it's Mark.
No, not Billy Crystal. It's Emilio Estevez.
And
Yeah.
from What About Bob? So Dan Lauria was Forrest Whitaker's partner in that.
Oh, gotcha.
They're trying to save, but they're trying to raise money for the regional theater because it's been hit really hard. And,
oh wait, is he still doing that?
yeah, so he still needs 2 more people, and he'd prefer people of color if he can. But I'll text you the website.
Can you resend me everything?
Yeah.
Okay,
so,
cool.
Yeah, so he's just hoping that you can do a scene or read from something, and then they'll post it on the website. A lot of big actors have done it. Bryan Cranston, Ron Perlman.
Well, yeah, recent because I know he was like either a scene or like also telling
or a story.
A story. Yeah, which I was kind of keen to, but like I was today actually was like the first day I was working out, and I was like, oh wait a minute, I think I haven't noticed my back in a minute. Like so, I was like, oh, it's better, but it was pretty jacked up there for a minute.
Yeah, I'm glad it's better, but yeah, it can be anywhere from 2 to 10 minutes. So
okay, yeah, resend me all that.
Okay, I will. All right, but yeah, I'll be back in October. Do you need help with moving or anything? I'm not that far from you. If you need help.
No, we when you do a cross country move, so like we have packers who are going to come pack everything, and then the movers load it all in trucks, and we're driving cross country. We're sending George on a plane, and my mom's going to pick her up, just because it's going to be one less person in the car, and she's a disgruntled teenager, so she'd rather be on a plane and be stuck in a car with us for a week. So we're gonna do that.
Are you gonna take a week to go across? Are you gonna go see something?
Yeah, we've been plotting it. It's gonna take about a week. And yeah, we did it once. We'll do it again.
Are you back in Pasadena?
The Pasadena area. Yeah. We're looking we haven't fully even found our place yet. We're still kind of we're still looking. So, but we're tied to that area. Because my mother's in Monrovia, so
Okay. Oh yeah. So she's not too far. So she's not in Orange
yeah.
County anymore.
You said what?
She's not in Orange County anymore.
No. She's in Monrovia and very happy. So if we can get anywhere into that area, we'll be close to her. And then
Oh, yeah.
trying to find good schools, all that stuff, life stuff.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on. Appreciate it. Hopefully I did okay.
No, you did great. You did great. It's good to see you. Well, yeah, definitely. Let me know when you're back in town.
I will. All right.
All right.
All right, man.
Everybody, hey, thank you so much. I appreciate you guys for like listening to me. Stay safe out there and get vaccinated if you can. And look forward to like maybe seeing you guys in person. Be safe.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
All right. So it's just you and I. All right. Gotta make sure.